Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. I see that there are a few people still joining. So I'm Aurelia De Cara, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be participating in this year's EMEA Women in Payment Symposium and to be hosting this session. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about how it has been to lead high-performing teams in a hybrid workspace. And I think in particular, we'll discuss how managers are navigating this new reality and how team leaders how can they continue to motivate and inspire and push career growth while also ensuring the flexibility that the hybrid model entails. So without further ado, I will let our fabulous speakers introduce themselves. So why don't we start with Laura? If you could give us a 30-second about yourself, and if you also want to talk quickly about your team, if they're in different geos, and if they're already back in the office. So
perfect. Thanks a lot, and thanks for making me part of this panel. So my name is Laura Franco. I'm part of Bank of America. I joined this organization 3 years ago. I'm responsible for Western team. I'm based in Madrid, but I've got teams all around Europe. So I'm leading a team that is managing different geographies, as Marilia said. And I've got teams in Paris, in Italy, in Benelux, and in Madrid. So we'll talk a little bit about how we manage these different geographies and how we manage the connection between everybody. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Martina, you're next.
Hi, hello everyone. Delighted to be here. First time being on the Women in Payments panel, so thrilled to join today. I'm Martina Power. I'm based in Ireland and I work for ACI Worldwide. I've been with ACI for 15 years and during all of that time have worked as part of global teams with people all over the world. When I first became a manager many years ago, my entire team was remote for I think the first 3 years of being a manager. So I learned hybrid sort of remote working with the team right from the get-go in a leadership role. And, have thoroughly enjoyed working with a very multicultural global team for many years now. So looking forward to this discussion.
Great, thank you. And Maria, over to you, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maria Campbell. I'm VP of People at Griffin. We are seeking authorization to become a bank. There's a team of about 35 of us at the moment, so we're very, very new. We are broadly based across the UK. We do have an office in London. We also have people who are outside of the UK. And our office would maybe seat about a third of the company at the moment. So we've been kind of hybrid remote since day one. Previously, I've managed teams where we've had 3, 4, 5 different offices and a mixture of people who are fully remote as well. So I've kind of seen the full gamut of the hybrid remote experience.
Very good, thank you. Okay, so why don't we dive right in? And I think the first question top of mind that ties nicely with the title of our session. So do you have any specific strategies to keep your teams engaged and to maximize productivity? And I think, in fact, this is actually a good segue for us to think a little bit about also how going hybrid actually affects the way we think about what performance means, right? Have we revisited the concept? So what can you tell us about your experience? And maybe we can start with Martina.
Sure. So I think the obvious thing that's really critical, with a global and a hybrid team is communication. And never more so, I think, particularly when everybody's sort of working from home, particularly during the pandemic, it made us really step back and think hard about the different ways in which we can communicate. So one of the things that we have done that's worked really well is leveraging like social media type of interaction. We use certain tools, provided by like corporate tools provided by Facebook that allow us to post information and people can access it whenever it suits them. So rather than relying on the traditional get everybody into a meeting room and everybody's face to face, posting content that people can access when it suits them in their time zone, and keeps everybody connected. So we've had some really good success with that. And also it comes with that, it's not just posting emails and things, but it's video content. So getting to see people's faces, you still get to have some of that, see the body language and get to see some of the visual aspects of communication through that kind of social media type form. I think that has worked really well, and particularly for a younger audience as well, that like that form of communication. That's I suppose one of our top tips looking back over the last couple of years, something that has really picked up, that although we had rolled it out prior to the pandemic, wasn't seeing that much traction. But then when everybody became remote, that suddenly became something that kind of took off, and we saw a lot more engagement. So that's worked really well. I don't know, Maria, do you want to chime in anything from your side, or?
Yeah, I think the pandemic thing's really interesting, because I think like you kind of have this class of companies who are global before, maybe office-based global, but then rethinking the way that engagement and productivity look while also dealing with a pandemic where you have great uncertainty, lots of things are outside of your control, people around you are ill, there's a lot of fear. I think that actually had a huge impact on the way that we think about engagement and productivity. Personally, I found that one of the really nice things about being distributed is that people are able to take advantage of the flexibility that you have. Like, you're not in the same place, and so you need to be better at communicating, like you say, and that needs to be more asynchronous as well, which means that actually you can take breaks in the middle of the day if you need to. You're able to sort of engage in that focus time in a way that you just can't in a noisy office.
Laura?
Yes, also maybe one of the other things is that the pandemic gave us the chance to know more people at the personal level, because communication was more than usual. And we stayed the conversations asking for families, how you feel. And I think that makes us a little bit more human. And at least on my opinion, I get to know better the team on a personal level. So something that it was like positive during these challenging times was that as well. So communication more than usual, and get to know people at the personal level as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always someone running on the background. You inevitably need to ask about people about what's going on in their lives, right? So Ninika, hi, good. Hi. Glad that you joined. How is it going? So would you like to give a 30-second introduction about yourself? Yeah. And tell us a little bit about your team?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I tried to log in and then, a little bit early, and then again faced some technical problem, but finally I got here. So I'm Ninika. I'm a product and strategy leader. Currently, I'm with WorldPay from FIS Global, where I am defining a product proposition and the strategy for WorldPay on a global reference, building their quite aspiring term, which is a bigger aspiration. And apart from that, I'm also engaged with a number of consulting and number of communities, like, big passionate about working anything related to women empowerment, or local communities. I'm also a local cadet leader. I am quite diehard fan, anything happening in the payment coming from banking and financial services. And I have met some of you, but not all of you. It's glad that, to know each of you being part of this event. If I can talk about, the little bit of things that we have been, I've been listening, some of you from last few minutes. The pandemic, I treat it as a opportunities, because many things we learned from it, from the pandemic, how to, it really makes us more flexible. And as Laura said, we established a personal connection with our team. That's where I realized there are a number of hidden things that I should have thought, before pandemic. in knowing about my team, each members. We all are human. We are not robotics. At the end of the day, everybody wants to go back to family. So I always say to my team or anybody that we spend, more than 1/3 of our time at work. So that's a bigger part of our life. So having a healthy environment, healthy work-life balance, and what works best for individual and for your team. So that is something I really learned, during this pandemic, which I should have thought that it's not new, but the situation made us.
Absolutely, it's very interesting because that's exactly what Maria was just pointing out. Like a lot of multinational companies working remotely was somewhat a reality already, but it's interesting how the pandemic and now the fact that hybrid has become institutional kind of changed the way we look at it. Right? It's really interesting. So
And
thank you.
it also gave us opportunity to create a very diversified team. Previously, probably it's a mental blockage. We say no, she or he is not that much commutable to the office, so we can't give an offer or something. But now, I could able to make a very diversified team. Uh, you know, um, from anywhere, everywhere, people can work, people can contribute. So that makes my team more, stronger. And beyond that also, I thought of that are also some challenges. I will not say like, you are not seeing the person, and you don't know what's happening, because everybody is like us, mom, working mom, and
Yeah.
no kids. We also I try to find out some activities, with I try to work out with my leaders, like CPOs and senior VPs, how to make that engagement, how to improve that collaboration, so that people should feel that yeah, they are engaged at the work, and the productivity should not affect. So
Yeah,
there
that's
are,
interesting because you're already kind of providing feedback on what my next point was going to be, which is exactly what do you think is the main role of leaders in managing people in this new reality, particularly because we're talking about people who are sitting in different countries, people who do not meet in person regularly, and we know that just a quick coffee break does make the difference in the types of connections that we establish. So I would also open the floor and ask the others, like, what do you think is your main role as leaders while people are still adjusting to this new reality of work?
I think a huge part of it is role modeling, like role modeling the behaviors that we need to see from our teams. And part of that is like showing that we are using the flexibility. Like I live in London. I also have an office in London, and I could go to the office every day, but that wouldn't role model like sort of having that equality of access and those equality of connections with people who aren't able to do that. So working from home sometimes, working from the office sometimes is a really important part, I think, of role modeling leadership in a hybrid environment.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's really key. And the other side of it is things like the work-life balance. If you're somebody that spends all weekend sending emails, you're sending an underlying message to your team that you're expecting them to be always on, right? So it's, even though you might think, well, it doesn't matter because, I'm not expecting them to reply. But at the end of the day, you're sending a message to people that, you're expecting, that's the behavior that's sort of expected at that level.
Yeah.
So being conscious of all your actions and how people interpret that.
Right. And it's so powerful, like working in a company where occasionally your CEO broadcasts that he's feeling kind of grumpy, so he's going to go and take his dog for a walk is so powerful. People saying like, oh yeah, I'm going to be offline for a couple of hours because I have a therapy appointment is like a really positive kind of role modeling on the expectations that we have of how people will adapt with distributed to hybrid work to be able to kind of integrate their life.
Yeah, I think you just reminded me of something that I think is really important too, is you hear a lot about the effects that the pandemic's had on people's mental health. And, actually acknowledging that and being able to talk about that, I think is really important too. I recently we had somebody in ACI come in and give a talk to, he's a famous rugby player in Ireland, and he came and he struggled with his mental health, and he came and gave a talk to everybody did a virtual talk for everybody in the Limerick site. And it was scheduled for an afternoon. And I knew people would feel like, oh, it's the busiest time of day. We have so many global calls. It's like the hot part of the day when everybody's trying to get all the meetings done. And, you know, I sent a note out to the site saying, you know, the world won't end if you decline other calls and decide to take this hour for yourself to, you know, learn something about how to manage your health. And I was actually amazed at the amount of responses I got from people to say how much they appreciated that, you know, people were acknowledging the importance and that people are struggling with mental health and being able to have that conversation and even acknowledge your own challenges. You know, I mean, it's something even myself, I've struggled with burnout and things in the past, right? So being able to actually acknowledge that and again, role model the fact that we're not expecting perfection, that everybody is human and, you know, you have that relationship with people and people can talk about it, right? And be conscious of that when you're having the conversations around work-life balance, that it's not just about clocking off at certain times, but it's also about having the flexibility to look after yourself when you need that time.
Yeah, and some companies actually started offering like supporting programs to support mental health, right? You can just join certain apps where they have their own policies to join like meditation sessions and other events of this one.
Yeah.
Laura?
But I think it's important as well as a leader to have empathy with your team. I think it's critical to support people during tough times, to have the communication open, to empower people, that they are part of a team as well. Because, for example, my team is in different locations, but they feel they are part of the team. So communication, yes, of course, is very important, but they feel, even if they are far away from myself, I'm based in Madrid, I've got teams all around Europe, they feel part of the team. And also to show gratitude. I think it's important as a leader that we show gratitude to our team. Whenever there is a win, whenever there is a deal, to give visibility to everybody, because everybody is in different locations, and maybe your manager is based in London, but to give visibility, to show gratitude, empathy, I think it's three very important words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point, Laura. I mean, I never forget. This is what I learned from my leaders with whom I have been worked and who has mentored me in some point of time. So any kind of contribution, I take time to recognize my team and say give individual appreciation or any feedback, and because it's very, very important, this should be valued as a team member, and if someone has contributed something, they should know that they are equally important than like other member. So this is something as a leader I always take, because everybody at the end of the day we all are human beings, so everybody likes to be appreciated for the hard work they have put. Everybody like to be recognized, so taking that step little bit, and how well we can make them feel specialized, so this is very important to keep them motivated. And also, if there is any kind of team level or group level recognition, like we do, we in FIS we do every month, we say team member who is the man of the team. So that kind of things actually we do, and we say why this is for, what exceptional this person or that person has done. So that's the kind of thing actually. And sometimes we also give a little bit voucher where the person can go and buy something or have a coffee and all. So that is, as a leader, it's very important to inspire and empower people around you and your team member.
And I think since we're talking about recognition of these small wins of the team, how do you think that the hybrid models actually impacts career growth and development? Because as you were all saying, working remotely may represent like limited exposure to stakeholders or to management, or fewer opportunities to kind of make your work known. So how do you think, in terms of career progression, that the hybrid model can impact people's careers?
I think this one's really interesting, because I think the hybrid model has exacerbated a lot of the things that were unfair about the way that we approached career development in companies before. There was always some kind of bias underlying the decisions that were made. So often it was a case of like broadcasting your work and having other people talk about you because you were popular, and that was the way that your work would be recognized more and your career would develop. And now we've suddenly introduced a layer of potential bias, I guess, which is really, really visible for people, because you see that the people who spend more time in the office or wherever the leadership team are, whether that's the office or remote or wherever, are getting different opportunities. And it's just suddenly exposed the kind of inherent biases in the way that we've done career development. So I think people here are able to sort of capture that and say, oh, hey, we've introduced a new kind of differentiator that doesn't really signal whether or not someone is performing really well. Being able to kind of dig deeper into that and say, actually, how are we assessing performance? How are we making sure that opportunities are equal? Because if we're giving different opportunities to people who are based in an office where someone is versus based at home, or an office where there's not senior leadership present, like what are the other kind of arbitrary things that we're basing performance and promotion decisions on?
So that's interesting, because I guess I had the total opposite take of that, right? Because I think we're in the company that I'm in, we pretty much, majority of people have been remote now for 2 years, right? So it sort of leveled the playing field, because now, previous to that, you had people in offices, a certain amount of people, as you said, got visibility, but then everybody went home for almost 2 years. So it completely leveled the playing field. Every call was now, a WebEx conference or whatever. So now, previously you might have heard some sort of feedback around, oh, I'm kept out of the loop because I'm not in that office or whatever, but that just completely disappeared, because it was completely a level playing field, and everybody had the same opportunity to be visible, to, speak up on calls, to participate in whatever. So, so for me, like, the pandemic really helped with that, and I think now, even that we're sort of on the phased return to work, we're never going to go back to where we were, where everybody's back in the office. So I think this hybrid mode is always going to be there now, where, to me, I almost feel like it helps to level it, because if you want the opportunity to be visible, it shouldn't be about being in a particular building anymore. And because the teams are so global, and we have so many people that their manager isn't in the same office they're in anyway, it really hasn't become a factor. So I guess it depends on the company dynamic and the different environments, right?
No, that's super cool and really interesting. Like, it kind of doesn't surprise me that having that completely level playing field of everyone being remote has done that. And it'll be really interesting to see, like, how much deliberate effort does it take to maintain that when you do have the kind of fully established hybrid thing going on. Super interesting.
But I think we've got the tools as well, because we've been remotely for 2 years, as Martina was saying, and I agree with what she's saying. We were, everybody in the office, afterwards we were 2 years at home, but now we've got the tools to be visible, and everybody's at the same level. So results are there, you can connect with clients, you can continue to sell everything. For example, on my team, there is a sales role. So what I'm saying is that the tools are global. So you cannot see any difference on being at the office or at home, because the access to everybody is there.
Yeah.
And another thing also, particularly coming to this, how to, get that visibility. So what I did in my team is, running a regular knowledge sharing session. And I did ask my team, what you have done and what is that you have learned. So they are free to put some time, half an hour, 45 minutes, 1 hour, like who is engaging to which client, what they have learned, if they have done some research on the product and what's going on, what's happening in the competitive market. So every 4 to 6 weeks, I always get invitation from my, team, where they used to share the knowledge, what they have learned. So that's a very good forum where I can see who, who has contributed what and how they are actually leveraging that knowledge to other team member. So that's a very good tool I find in this remote way of working, and recognizing, what they are really contributing.
Oh, I love that. It's so nice to be to hear real examples of how people have kind of patched those things that we used to rely on the office as a crutch for, deliberately making spaces and platforms for that kind of thing. It's really cool.
One of the team member, he was running POC, proof of concept, and which was not successful. As you know, POC is always not successful. But the way Sihaj articulated, and the way it's like, she has done everything wonderful, nothing wrong and all. So that's how, like, how she has totally taken the journey, how she has engaged with client, with the vendor, with the technology team, and everything. At the end, what she was trying to achieve and what she achieved, actually, though the decision, my decision was not, finally will not be taking it forward, because I didn't see a very long term gain. But the way she has presented, the knowledge she has shared, it's a totally win-win, and I saw other people also learned a lot from that. So that's how I always recognize, the journey, not the what, we get, the objective what we get, but the journey what we learn.
I like that.
Great, thank you.
Interesting.
Now I wanted to switch gears. Actually, not really shift gears, but I wanted to go back to a point that we were discussing earlier, which is, how do you think that the fact that your teams are scattered around the world, do you think that working in this new model positively contributes to a more diverse and multicultural environment? I think Maria pointed out that in some companies, having people sitting everywhere was already a reality, but how do you think that the hybrid model actually contributes to a more diverse team?
I think if you're operating the hybrid model with a degree of like time flexibility as well, it's super, super useful for people with caring responsibilities. Like if you have to go and help your partner hook onto their dialysis machine every single day at 2 p.m., like being able to do that from home suddenly gives you a whole load of freedom. And likewise, there are lots of parents around who are able to like spend more time with their children, who aren't kind of constrained by dropping children off at school, going to work, coming home, picking them up. Like losing that commute is really helpful. And likewise for people with disabilities, right? Suddenly the fact that your office is in a grade 2 listed building that can't be modified so that you can actually get in the door makes it really helpful. But at the same time, like you still kind of have all of the biases that people generally have. There's a lot of logistical reasons why you can't necessarily hire people from across the globe entirely, whether that's visas, employment law, data protection concerns, time zones, language, anything like that. So I think it's a really big opportunity for us to continue building more diverse and inclusive teams. But at the same time, there are potential drawbacks. And I think particularly for people from marginalized groups, like not having to be always on, not always having to present as like your professional self, not always having to like shift the way that you interact with people so that you come across as like professional and put together and what people expect is really helpful. Like having that extra brain space to just sort of be yourself. I've had that from a lot of friends.
Yeah, you made an interesting point, because I think that, you hear a lot about, okay, it's hybrid, that means you can hire anybody anywhere. But the logistics and the practicalities of that aren't always real, right? I mean, I know with ACI, I think we have like 40 different offices, so we have people all over the world anyway. But every time we say, okay, we're going to hire somebody else in another country we're not in, like that's a massive HR, endeavor, right? To now like set up a legal entity and all the laws and translations and whatever. So while in the headline is, that you can just now hire anybody anywhere, it's not so practical in reality to actually do that. And I'm not sure everybody necessarily appreciates that. And I do think that's also part of a struggle for the leadership team with employees who maybe think that, well, we're hybrid, so why can't I go and move to Hawaii tomorrow, if that's where I want to work from, right? And maybe there's a little bit of unrealistic expectations. That we become so flexible that people are expecting, I can work anywhere, anytime, any place. And, there's some companies out there who've made statements like that, but I think for a lot of companies, it's not a practical reality. And it's, again, trying to balance what is truly hybrid, what does that really mean? Because I think that means a lot of different things to different companies. There's, you can be hybrid, but you may also want to have a certain amount of that face-to-face. So hybrid for some people means, well, you're going to come into the office, 2 days or 3 days every week. Well, that means you're living near the office. You're not living in, Timbuktu, right? So, it's going to be interesting. I don't know what the answer is yet, and I think a lot of companies haven't figured out exactly what hybrid means or what that's going to look like a year or two from now. But it's not as easy as it sounds.
Yeah,
you know.
no, totally.
Yeah.
Like that conversation of, oh, I'd like to work in this place for 3 months of the year. And you're like, okay, we need to talk about tax residency. We need to talk about whether or not there's an adequacy decision around data protection. Are you actually able to work there? Do you need to get a visa? We can't help sponsor you visa because we don't have an entity there. And people are like, oh, I just wanted to have a working holiday. You're like, yeah, sorry.
But also I think hybrid means differently. Like, for example, my team is they do a sales role. For me, my team that is traveling, going to see clients, they're traveling, they're out of the office, and they were out of the office before as well. So this is kind of hybrid model already, because they were traveling, sometimes at home, sometimes in the office. And my team is very diverse. I've got more than 10 nationalities because my team is spread all around Europe. So I think hybrid, and I agree with Martina, depends on the company, but also depends on the role that you have. If you have an administrative role that you need to be in the office or at home, it's one thing, but hybrid model on a sales role, when you're traveling, it's completely different, because maybe you already been doing this hybrid model, because when you're traveling, you're not in the office.
Yep.
Have you found, sorry, really curious about this. Have you found that your team who were traveling before find that they have like a better connection with the rest of the company now that everything's online, so they're missing out on fewer meetings? Like, how has that changed for them?
Well, for example, visiting clients, it was a bit different, because face-to-face, as Marilia was saying, when you connect the camera, you see the body language. Sometimes at first was easier to connect face-to-face than virtual. I think after 2 years, we start conversations with clients saying, how are you? How's your kids doing? Blah, blah, blah. It is true that, again, trying to connect with clients face-to-face is very nice, but I think we've got the tools, they're global, to stay connected with everybody. So inside the bank, for example, in my case, as a headquarter level with clients, etc. And clients are as well doing this hybrid model. They're keen to have connections on WebEx and also face-to-face, but they're doing the same thing as us. So they're having these global connections to stay in touch with everybody.
So coming to that, there is also another powerful tool that I just would like to talk about, because that's also very much on discussion. I know you people must be doing that. So that's called as coffee chat. Yeah, so that is becoming very, very popular, nowadays, and that's coming from, again, pandemic. So since I work on the commercials and keeping that regular personal touch with your merchants or biggies and all is very, very important. And also when you are working with other leaders to have the conversation on the a big impact, or getting some fundings and all. So how to cope up with that, because we are not going to office, we are not there 5 days and all. So it's very important to have that rapport, have that relationship. So very informal way that putting a coffee chat, and you start talking, no work, start talking about family, kids, and and maybe in the 5-10 percentage, then come to the point what actually how you are doing the business and getting the concerns, and so that's how the coffee chat is very, very on demand. I can see majority of the people, majority of the leaders, they have been talking about. Even I do also follow the same when I talk to my biggies, big merchants, or the clients, or the some of the vendors also, like how they're doing. And also with my boss and all, boss and couple of few bosses with whom I work, and how we are doing, just making a sense check, how we're going in this, because we're not meeting. When we're meeting, okay, we talk just normal, okay, this is what this is the problem. But since the meeting is very limited, coffee chat is becoming very, very important.
And we did the same, Ninika. We did the same at the bank. It was called a Coffee Connect. We did this Coffee Connect in the morning with APAC, for example, and in the afternoon with the rest of geographies. For example, it was a managing director with an analyst, a director with a VP. So it was a very informal conversation, but I think it gave us like a stay of team, a truly team, even where you are located. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in which organization you are inside the bank, but it was very good, and we call Coffee Connect.
Connection. Yeah, it's not like, no pressure that we are going to talk about some deal or talk about some
No.
delivery, but it's just I just said sense checking, and making sure, yeah, everybody is doing fine, and
Yeah.
they're feeling that connection. Yeah. Good.
And like deliberately carving out those spaces for the little chit chat that you'd have while you were in the kitchen making a cup of coffee or walking to and from the meeting room, like that, those few minutes either side, being able to kind of recognize the value of that and the value of the informal communication that we have.
It's wonderful to see how these small initiatives, they actually do wonders to the team spirits and to the way we connect with the team members. So actually, you were talking about how the team members interact among themselves, but how do you think that the hybrid model impacted the collaboration across teams, across different teams? Do you think that collaboration increased, decreased, remain unchanged? It doesn't really make a difference in terms of like whether there's physical distance or not. And then also, do you have any practical examples or tips to ensure consistency in the way that the teams interact?
In my case, for example, I've got routines. I usually do like within my team, like a team meeting. We put the camera on so we feel like closer because we are all in different locations. Also with the different stakeholders, I put routines like once per month, once per week. Maybe it's not a very long call. It's like a short call just to keep the communication open. And we share, for example, pipelines or some document where we are all on the same page. And like this, I try to keep the communication with the different product lines, for example, or different lines of business, etc.
Yeah, so for me, I do not feel much difference, to be honest, because when it is a multi-team, I'm not talking about my team, but it's a like different multi-team, but at the end, you work together. Because it's all global company that I have been working. So, even if pre-pandemic, we always work on mostly on the, cameras, remotes and all. So I do not see it is getting more impacted. However, if there is something really, really crucial that we need to meet off, team of teams, we do call, we set up one day and where, we come and do workshopping and meet everybody and make that first initial, conversation to make it easy, and then take it again, make it on the remote session. So I do not feel anything has been changed because of the COVID when working with the multi teams, different product lines and having that collaboration. Maybe someone might have different example.
Yeah, I think where I work, it kind of depends on the role you're in, right? So I agree with you, Nadia. Like in terms of my role, I don't really see any difference because we were always global, we were always on online calls and everything. But I noticed that though for like engineers who maybe spend their days at the keyboard but not in calls all of the time, I think, and I particularly feel for like some of the younger people that are joining, like maybe straight out of college or whatever, they're missing that experience of being on the ground face to face with people, going for lunch, going for coffee, getting to know people and building that connection. And so one of the things that we're trying to do now is create the notion of sort of team days, so that even though we're still hybrid, but that rather than, one person coming in on Monday, another person coming in Tuesday, another person coming Wednesday, and then you kind of say, well, I might as well be at home because nobody was in from my team, right? That you actually create like team Tuesdays so that everybody in that team will come in on a certain day, so that you still have the flexibility of being, working from home and all of that, but that you have the chance to get that FaceTime. I think that, a lot of the people who are either newer to the company or, you're earlier in their careers, and kind of building up that sort of interpersonal connections and relationship. I think that's something we need to kind of focus on more. That I'm certainly conscious of, that, some people have said to me, I've been here a year and I've never met anybody in my team. And for whatever reason as well, I don't know what the culture is like in other companies, but I know at ACI, when you go to leadership calls, majority of people turn their cameras on, but you go to a call with the engineers, not a single camera turned on. So a lot of people are saying, I don't even know what my teammates look like. I've never actually seen them. So like it's simple things that, you're working with somebody for a year and you don't know what they look like because they haven't turned their camera on. it's just small changes we can make, I think, that makes a big difference to people's experience of building that sort of sense of team and relationship. I think, as we get back, we need to kind of not lose sight of that and think that because people are in a day or two that, it's how do you make those day or two in the office effective. It's not just being in, sitting at the desk. It's being in and making the most of the time that you're actually in that office and getting the value out of it.
Yeah, and another thing also, like when we are going 1 or 2 days, we want to make sure that we come on that day where majority of the people can come, so we can see. So not like someone is coming Monday or someone is coming Tuesday. So I want to make sure when majority of my teammates are able to come, I take effort to come then. It's because me and my husband, we do share the childcare or so whatever. So I want to make sure so that I can have that face to face or put some time and talk about. We can make most use of the time.
I think it was a bit more difficult when in COVID, when we have like remote people onboarded remotely, joiners. That was a bit more difficult because the sense of belonging to a team, being on board remotely, it was hard. So the tools that we put in place for just to try to help them remains now. But it is true that for new joiners, being in the office and meet everybody, it's quite important. Because they've been 2 years at home without knowing anybody. Networking is quite difficult as well. And it is much easier just to start again, getting to know people. But this is different from people that they were on the company before.
Yeah, that's a good point. New joiners, definitely they need to build their network. They need to feel at work, at home, kind of, they have been. That's one thing. And second is, I always also feel, obviously, people are like 10, 12, 15 years of experience. We learned how to build a relationship, even if,
Yes.
but people just, I think about the freshers, 3, 4, very early career of their 3, 4, 5 years. They struggle, to be honest, when they are, they haven't left just to do their work remotely. That's something I do take care, or I ask someone experienced in my team to be mentor or to look
Yes.
after me, and to ensure that she or he who is kind of a very early stage of the like 3, 4, 5 years, they are not struggling, and making sure that so we are looking after so that's the kind of things, actually small things I do take care in my team.
This is such an interesting topic. I would have another 30 questions. We could stay all day long discussing, but unfortunately we are at time. So I wanted to thank you all very much for joining. Thank you for everyone who also joined this session. It was very nice to have you. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to reconnecting with you all very soon. Thank you very, very much. In the name of women.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.